your love light come into me. Show me what I need to see.
Welcome to the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria, an inspirational thought leader that offers transformational perspectives based on my unique experiences as a woman born without arms and legs. I feel like my life has been full of small victories that has led me to discover the greatness within. I believe that there is no summit upon which we reach our greatness. I believe it is a culmination of small victories achieved moment by moment when we turn toward the inward battle where we get to choose despair or hope, misery or miracles, defeat or victory. My goal is to awaken your potential, your purpose, and your power so that you can discover the greatness that lives within you. Think of this podcast as your weekly portion of tools, stories, and teachings that help you reflect on the small victories in your life. Thanks for tuning in, and let's begin. Welcome to another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria. What if grief wasn't something to move on from, but something to move with? A companion that opens new doors you never knew existed. In this powerful episode, I'm joined by Cyndee Dhalai, a woman whose life has been shaped by loss, not destroyed by it. From being disowned by family, losing her husband of 33 years, to walking again after 11 years in a wheelchair. Cyndee's journey reveals that grief doesn't close the book, it flips the page to a chapter you never saw coming. This episode isn't about healing, it's about discovering what becomes possible when you let your grief become your guide. Cyndee, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Pauline.
We just were speaking right before we jumped into recording this episode, and I said, it seems like whenever I am going through something in my life, a person for my podcast shows up and an expert in their field shows up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. We're going to have this amazing conversation. It's selfishly helping me, but I know when you help one, you help so many other people because grief is universal. And I want to, yeah, you said something right before we hit record that sometimes grief comes in different shapes and sizes and we don't recognize it as grief. Can we just start there? Because I think it sets the foundation about what we're talking about, because I think people think of grief of this one thing, like, oh, someone died.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point, because the fact is, like, when we say grief, we instantly think of somebody dying or passing away or something dramatic happening. But whilst grief is traumatic in and of itself when you lose someone through they pass away, but grief is not just that sudden absence. Now, I prefer to say it as a loss and absence. And like I told you, mentioned you before, grief can come in many forms and sizes, and grief itself is messy. It is unpredictable. It is something that I don't think anybody is really capable of handling. You're never prepared for when grief hits you. And when I talk about grief, I speak about a loss and an absence that you feel in you and in your life. And that sometimes you can lose a job and you don't think you grieve it, but you do grieve it, because you grieve the security of it. You grieve probably the colleagues you worked with. You do feel the absence of what was there before. And that is a form of grief. But we don't identify it as grief. We identify it as, I lost my job. This is missing from my life. But that is how grief is. Grief really is a sense of loss and a sense of absence in your life. And it can happen. You lose a pet and you grieve your pet because their loss and absence that's missing. You move homes, you relocate to a different country, you relocate to a different place. And you do grieve it because it's what you were familiar with before. So you do suffer a sense of loss and absence. And that, in a way, is what grief is also. But we don't look at it like that. We always see grief as, oh my God, it's something that is earth-shattering. Yes, it is earth-shattering when something like that you hold close to you, and that is a integral part of your life, and that becomes part of you. Like when you love someone and they pass away, it shocks your entire system because your whole life has been reshaped and you don't know what to do, because whereas before there were you and me, now there's just me, and the we is gone. So you have to learn to come back to yourself. And that takes a lot from people. And like you mentioned before, dealing with grief is not something that anybody really is ready to face, no matter what form it comes in, whether it's a job loss, a divorce, loss of a pet, loss of a job, having to relocate, or friendships breaking up, or having to move away and leaving old friends behind. All that is forms of grief.
Yeah. So that opens up the definition of grief. So for anyone who's listening to this right now, if you just listen to the introduction, you're like, oh, that's not me. I'm not going through any grief right now. Perhaps it doesn't look like how you think it's supposed to look like. So I really thank you for getting us all on the same page, Cyndee.
Sometimes things happen in our lives that we don't see as grief. But then I realized, like when I got my body got really, really ill, and I lost the ability to walk, because to me, independence was very, very vital. The freedom to move about, to drive my car, to just pick up myself and go where I want to go. And I lost that when my body got really, really ill. And like, I did grieve that loss of freedom and that loss of independence and that ability to move and to do what I want to do sometimes when I felt like it. So in a sense, that was grief for me also.
And you've experienced grief in all different shapes and sizes as well. And what you just said, I can totally relate to. It's not necessarily the same level because I drive a special customized van for me, but when the equipment started failing, I couldn't drive for 3.5 years, but there was no deadline on that. It just was, you're not driving. And so really understanding that I had that loss of independence and freedom as well, and had to figure out, okay, so what next?
Yes.
Because I didn't want to stay there. Unfortunately, it was only 3.5 years. And I say only because it could have been much longer. And so it was funny because like when COVID hit, everyone I think grieved. And I was like, okay, we're stuck in our houses. I've done this before. So in a way, grief made me stronger and more resilient to be able to respond to circumstances that feel are out of our control. But I know that you've experienced grief, like I mentioned in the introduction. Can you just share with the audience your story a little bit more?
Okay. I grew up in a traditional East Indian home, and this was like in the 70s. And so growing up, you kind of followed the traditions and you were expected to behave a certain way, dress a certain way, socialize. And this was like in the 70s. So things have changed now because that was like over 50 years ago. And I had the personality in that didn't really sync with everybody else, in that I questioned. And if I didn't find something or it didn't make sense to me, I would ask questions. So I kind of got labeled the mischievous ones. And the words I probably got told the most was, "Shut up, Cyndee." And I was like, okay, but if you said I'm supposed to be honest and ask questions and stuff like that, then how it is when I ask and it end up being like, do as I say, not as I do. So I would always question things, and I kind of you felt the isolation from very young because everybody else in the family they followed the rules except me. And I would always get in trouble because I'd open my mouth and ask, because to me it's like, if I don't understand, I'll ask a question. And if I don't agree with something, I want to know why this is being done this way and why you're telling me this but doing that. And this carried over into religion also. So I got a label of being the one who never fit anything. Because girls weren't supposed to climb trees in dresses, which I did. Girls weren't supposed to be having boys as best friend because that was totally taboo. You're not supposed to have a boy who was a best friend and things like that. So I got isolation, and then my way of thinking is that I embrace everybody because I where I live is like a multi-ethnic, multicultural society. So you're exposed to many religions, many different ethnicity of people, their cultures, their beliefs, their ideas, their traditions. And while we mix together, sometimes what you found happening, well, remember, this was like 50 years ago, and that everybody kept to their own cliques and stuff. But I would talk to everybody. It didn't matter to me because I just like talking to people, and people seemed to like me because that's how I was. So I could talk to anybody. And of course, I get in trouble because whilst you could be friends and go to school and mix with people, having a close relationship, like a close friendship, or even getting involved with them was not something that you did. And then at 21, no, I had always said, I'm never going to get married. And then at 21, I got married, which was kind of young for like most people. And well, my husband was not of my religion, and he didn't have the same ideas and practices as my family. And I got ostracized and I got disowned because I was given the choice of it's either him or them. And I said, well, I don't have to live with you for the rest of my life. So I choose who I wanted to get married to. Because normally, like, there would be arranged marriages and stuff like that, or you have to get your parents' approval. And I went against no. I did what I wanted to do. I said, okay, if I want to get married to this person, I will get married to this person. I mean, this is the person I have to do the rest of my life. So I got married and I got disowned. And since 1988, I've never spoken to any member of my blood relatives. So that was being disowned. And then we had the settling in with everything and stuff. And then, well, my husband and I worked very hard and we built what we had together by ourselves, and 2 children and stuff like that, who are great people. And then my body started failing me. And we couldn't understand what it was. And I lost 4 years of my life in a fog of illness, I call it, because I flatlined a few times, and all I have to go on is my medical records and what my family told me, because I don't remember much of what happened to me during those 4 years. And I ended up in a wheelchair. And I was in a wheelchair for 4 years. And like I said, I had a loss of my freedom, a loss of my independence, and I grieved that a lot. And I did not like it because I was fighting myself, because I said, this is not how I'm supposed to be. I don't like this. And you kind of had to fight yourself to come back to a point where you have to adjust and readjust your thinking and stuff like that to move past everything. And that's somehow I did that by the grace of God, because medically, I'm not supposed to be here.
That's amazing. You said that there was a change of mind that you had to have. Can you share what that was? Because sometimes it's just a perspective shift, and it could be just the slightest degree that shifts everything.
Yeah, because, okay, like, I guess everything I've been through life kind of moved me to the point where I sat down, because growing up, I was wonder, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so different from everybody else? What am I doing wrong? Is it me? But then I said, but this is how I think. This is who I am. And every time I do something that isn't in keeping with me, I would feel it in me, and I would know in myself that this is not who I am. So after my body got really ill, and the 4 years and whatever, and to be honest, I did try to walk and stuff like that and thing, but I would get a lot of buff, scolded, because it was a danger for me to actually try to walk, because if I broke a bone or if I damaged myself, I'm allergic to all medication, so no doctors could treat me, right? So it's not like if I can go in and they can give me anesthetic or anything like that and reset the bone, because I'm allergic to all of that, and they could actually end up killing me. So I couldn't do all of that, and I would still try, and like I would get mom. And my husband would tell me, "Son, don't do that, because you don't know what it's like when you flatline." And it's quite true. I don't know what it was like for them. And I remember one day my children were telling me, they said, "Mom, you have to stop, because you have no idea what we go through when you flatline, because you don't know what it's like for us." And I was like, and that kind of stopped me, because I thought to myself, I was being so selfish and wanting to have what I had before when everything has changed. And I sat down and I thought about it, and I said, Cyndee, think about it. You don't know what they go through, what it would be like to have a mother And my children were like 20 and 15 at the time when I started getting really, really ill. I said, what would it be like to have your parent suddenly get ill and for 4 years you don't know if they're going to live or die? Because I flatlined over 5 times. And the doctors couldn't do anything. All they had to do was just wait and see if I would recover, if I would come back, on how I would be, because most times they didn't even know if I would have cognitive function when I came back because it was so bad. And I said, that was being selfish because I put them through a lot. Maybe it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. It happened because, I mean, we don't ask for illnesses, but they do appear. And I sat down and I thought about it and I said, you know what? What do I have? Not what I lack, not what I lost. What do I have right now? Yes, I lost my freedom. Yes, I had to give up my job because I got ill. Yes, I can't drive anymore. Yes, I can't just pick up myself and do what I want to do. Yes, there's a lot of things that I said, but what do I have? I have a family. I am still breathing. I have a wheelchair. I can still move about. I have support. I can still do things and I can write and I still have my brain in my head and it's functioning well. So I started picking up on little things that I actually had. Now, it may not seem much to people, but it was a lot to me in the sense that there were a lot I was still capable of. So I started to say, okay, what are the advantages of me being like this, of being in the position I am? That may sound strange to some people. Your body has lupus and chronic kidney disease and anemia, and you have migraines and you have Raynaud's phenomenon. You're in a wheelchair. You have allergies to all medication. You can't eat certain foods because you're allergic to them. Yeah, but what are the advantages of that? And the advantages I came up with that still have a home. I wake up every day. I can learn to do new things. I have a wheelchair and I can move about and I have space to do things in. And it gives me a chance to learn to be more patient. Even though I was a teacher before, I learned to be more patient. I learned to really look at people. I learned to really listen. That was the most important. I learned to really listen to what people were saying. Because sometimes we're speaking to people, but our brain is jumping ahead to what they're going to say or what my response is going to be to something they say. You don't really listen to people. And you learn to really listen because, listen, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't move. So if I can get up and be doing something otherwise or whatever, or I'm busy doing something and you're talking, but my mind is half on what you're saying and half on what I have to do otherwise. You kind of have to sit and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned to really listen. I learned to be more patient. I learned to see people, really see them and try to figure out, okay, why they act this way they do. And then I said, okay, fine, I'm in a wheelchair, but I can still move around. And my kitchen was set up in such a way that everything was accessible to me. So I started learning to cook and bake, and then I love sewing. So I never took a sewing course in my life, but I started to look at how the clothes and deconstruct them and put it all together. And I started sewing. I started reading a lot. Okay, I said, okay, I got more time to read now because when I was working, it used to be up late in the night trying to finish a book, and I love reading. Now I had more time to read. Now I have more space. And like, even though like my children were, one was in university, one was in high school, and my husband, he would shift 12-hour shifts, I had a lot of time by myself. And I began to enjoy the time I had for myself because normally my time for myself would be late in the night when everybody was asleep. But now I had time for myself, so I can actually sit down and think and just be me. And those are the advantages. So when you sit down and you really count the advantages in a bad situation, that's how it works out. Now, I know grief is messy. Grief is personal. Grief is deep. Grief is anguish. It's anger. It's denial. It's why did this have to happen to me? And you go through all these stages, which doesn't follow any set pattern. But when you look at it, you have to step back sometimes and be the participant, the observer, not the participant only in your grief.
That's really powerful. I heard so much in what you just shared. And again, it's something that I can relate to. And I just want to put words to it and reiterate what you shared and break it down. Because what I heard is first you had to surrender. You had to accept things for what it was. That means you aren't going to try to go back and become or have what you had before this illness. And so really just, I believe that surrender allows you to accept. So there's nothing broken, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to go after. It's just a peace that you have when you surrender and accept what is. And then to move from that, because from there, when there's nothing to strive for or fix, from there, you can start practicing gratitude of what you do have. I love that question. What advantages does this situation offer me in this moment? And so that's huge. And also a reminder that all of us are often running. We don't feel like we're running, but we're running. We're working. We have the kids. We got our house. We got car problems, like whatever it is, we're running. And it really doesn't give us time to just be. And what is it that would bring me joy? Like you love to read, or what would bring me joy? And you started exploring like cooking or sewing. Like that's really beautiful. And I think a good reminder, I know for me, because I can't, like if we're having a party or my husband's doing stuff around the house, I can't participate in the doing of the things. And I don't know what your beliefs are, but I'm Christian. And so in the Bible, Jesus goes to Martha and Mary's house, and Martha is the one busy doing all the things and cleaning and getting food together. And she gets upset because Mary is just sitting at Jesus' side and just talking.
Listening. Yeah.
Yes, and listening and being with him. And Martha gets upset, and Jesus says, no, what Mary is choosing to do right now is what needs to be done. And it's such a simple story. And to remind us that we're Marthas, we're so busy in the doing that we forget that the best place we can be, and sometimes circumstances force us to be in the Mary position.
Now I'm smiling because I'm a human being. I'm not created to be a human doing. You know what I mean? And what we have to realize sometimes is that, you see, this moment right now is the only moment that you have that is real and that you are living. And very often we are, like I told you, we are planning in our head so far ahead. Okay, yeah, I am talking to you here, but at the same time, I might be planning, okay, what happened? What do I have to do after I speak this? What I'm going to do this evening? Okay, what do I feel to eat? I mean, those are our natural thoughts, isn't it? That's the first thing. Or
Yes.
you're supposed to be, you're at a party, you're enjoying yourself, you're in a celebration, you're thinking, oh God, I have to clean up all this mess afterwards. Wonder what time everybody's gonna go, and then tomorrow I have to do but you're not enjoying the moment. And that is something that I learned to do, because being how I am and what I went through, it taught me in a certain way, especially grief. And we're going to bring it back to grief and loss, because what it teaches you is that, yes, you can have plans, but life is unpredictable. You don't know the plan that God has for your life. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And if I remember, like the Bible says, give us this day our daily bread.
Yes.
And you say, and it tells that tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. So the thing is, you have to deal with what you have today, what you have right now. And it may sound as if you don't know my situation. You don't know what I'm going through. I have discipline. I have to, whatever. Yes, we all have, nobody knows your life because it is your life. But also at the same time, it is also up to you to decide, because you have a choice. You decide how you want to move forward. And grief and loss, and when you feel the absence of someone, can be overpowering. It is overpowering, because sometimes you think, okay, you talk to a therapist or you talk to friends, and you kind of think in yourself that, okay, I think I'm in a good place. I'm managing, I'm moving forward, I'm going back to my job, I'm looking after the home, I'm doing this and that. But then one day it'll hit you, because that's what happened to me, because I thought for like about almost 2 years, I thought I was managing. And then something happened that really shook me to the core. And I just realized that I was not handling it, I was not managing it. What I was doing was I was kind of compartmentalizing pieces of it. In that, okay, this happened to me, whatever, whatever. And that's when I found out that, yes, you surrender to your grief. You accept that the person is gone, but you don't agree with it sometimes. Some part of you does not agree with it. And that's why I wrote in the book, I wrote that we can say, okay, yes, this happened to you, surrender, you accept, but you don't agree with your loss. And once you don't agree with what is missing in your life, that creates a gap. And that gap is where you'll find yourself going back and back like a circle and on a loop. Because until you agree with yourself, okay, this was part of my life. Whether it's somebody you love who died, whether it's a relationship that broke up, whether you went through a divorce, whether you lost your job, whether you moved to somewhere different, or you lost a close friendship or something or whatever, you have to say, okay, this was part of my life. I went through it. I had an experience. I had good times. I had bad times. And it was something that helped to shape me in some way or the other. You surrender, you accept it, and then you have to agree with it and said, okay, that was my past. I agree that that is no longer present in my life. I have the memories of it. I will hold those memories. But now it is time for me because I am the one left here now. I don't have what was before. This is where I am in the present. And you kind of make a note, whether you can write it down in a journal or whether you can, sometimes even recording your own voice helps you, because when you hear yourself speaking, things come out that you have no idea that you would say to yourself. And you have to remember that you live with yourself 24 hours a day. And sometimes you have this automatic mind play that goes on, playing over the same thing over and over and over. So it's like a background noise. And you don't realize that you're just looping round and round in the same thing. And you allow yourself to go with the flow because it's comfortable, because it's what you're accustomed to. So you have to stop yourself. And when you actually sit down and start forcing yourself, because you do have to force yourself initially to sit down and say, okay, what is going on? Why? Where is this coming from? Why? What have I not let go of? What have I not surrendered? What have I not found agreement in myself with? And when you sit down and you start doing it, you realize a whole set of things come up. Maybe you don't agree with the fact that what was in your life is no longer there. Maybe you find it, you think it's unfair because, God, I didn't deserve this. This is not right. I mean, I don't think I did anything to deserve this loss happening, with losing my job or this person or whatever, or breakup or whatever. I didn't deserve it because I did my best. So you try to switch to anger, and anger sometimes is just a secondary emotion we have when we want to not face things. So what you do is you start journaling, I know journaling is a popular thing, but sometimes we just journal externally because this is what everybody else is doing. But when you sit down and you actually think about what you write and you go back and you read it, you have to face yourself. Because if you write something and you know to yourself, that isn't really true, when you go back and read it, you remember that, okay, that isn't really how I was feeling. And you can't convince yourself, because ultimately you can't lie to yourself, because part of you is going to say, you're lying. Nope.
So when you do come into agreement with it, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
When you do come into agreement with it, it's bit by bit, you begin to accept the fact that this is no longer present. This is no longer here. And I might look for something, but it's not there anymore. And you find little by little in yourself, you begin to step out and create space. In that you say, okay, I'll go back out to work, and maybe I will get more involved and pay close attention to how I actually work. Or I have my children, I'm gonna spend more time and focus more on them. And you find yourself little by little. No, we do it automatically. It's just that sometimes we don't put whole effort into the agreement and we take it for granted. You begin to create space, and that's what I mean. When you come into agreement with the fact that this is no longer part of my life, you can step out and you can maybe, okay, it's just me alone now, or this is not in my life anymore. So what can I do? And you focus more on yourself. Now, this is not being selfish. There's a difference between self-awareness and being selfish. Selfish means, oh, this is me, and I'm just going to do everything I want to do and stuff like that. And I don't care what anybody says or whatever. And you kind of pull people and you kind of use people because they said, well, I suffered this loss, so people are supposed to feel sorry for me. But no, 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 no. That is being selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness means, what do I want, or what do I think is in my best interest, and how can I help others with the experience that I have? And that way, what you do is and that's when you begin to notice that you come in agreement with the loss, because you are stepping out of of yourself, in that you're reaching out to other people, and where instead people would say, oh my God, I feel so sorry for you. I'm so sorry about your loss. Now you are comforting them and said, yeah, I know you miss a person too and stuff like that and things. But we had good memories, and you laugh at the memories that come up and things, and you encourage them also. And if somebody's going through a difficult situation, you can give them an ear. And you can say, well, I know it's not the same situation, and maybe I don't really know how you care about the person, but I mean, I know that you care deeply, and know that I'm here for you if you want to talk and stuff. That's how you know you come in agreement with yourself, because you start giving freely of yourself. And okay, and then you might see something in another way. I always wanted to go and learn to swim, or to scuba dive, or to go running, or to start skating, or join a group. And you find yourself inclining, or you might go online and start learning something because it catch your interest. And that's how you know you come up, because you start stepping out and creating space. Now, you still hold the loss inside of you, you still hold your memories inside of you. You didn't forget, because remember, once something's in your memory, you can't forget it, right? And unless they lobotomize you, I mean, obviously, but you will always carry a little thread to that. And once you find yourself stepping out, and you find yourself finding peace and finding a little more joy in helping others, and in connecting to people, and in giving, not because you have to, or because you think, well, okay, yes, I went through this experience and maybe good for the people. No, no, no. But because it feels good in you. That's when you know you're coming to agreement with your grief and your loss and things like that.
Yeah. I love how the idea of self-awareness actually allows you to step outside of yourself. It sounds counterintuitive,
Yes.
but it's true, because self-awareness then allows you to observe yourself versus be in yourself for a second, and then see how you can then pay it forward to someone else.
You see, a lot of people, when we say self-awareness, people think, okay, you have to be aware of your breathing, you have to be aware of the image you project to people. I know I may sound a bit like I'm against everybody with self-awareness, but no, I'm not. Self-awareness is important, but it's how we interpret self-awareness that really matters, because you can be self-aware and all you're doing is projecting an image or making a brand of yourself. When we talk about branding, you only project what you want, certain aspects of yourself or qualities that you want people to see, so that they become attracted to you. But that is not really self-awareness. That is specialized self-awareness when you think about it, really. But self-awareness is when you can actually catch yourself thinking a certain way, when you can actually pull up on yourself and find yourself saying, no, 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 no. That was the old me. That isn't me. Because remember in the Bible, when they said, when God spoke to Jacob and he told him, you'll be called Israel now because the old man is gone. And that is what happened when we go through our change. You know, when loss or any form of development happens, you do change. And you go from the old you into the new you. And when people talk about become a new version of yourself, but you don't really become a new version of yourself. What you do is you step into the updated version of yourself that you were always meant to be. Because remember, when you're a child, you walked. You were a baby, you turned over, then you learned to crawl, then you learned to walk, then you learned to run. And okay, that was how you see the rest of your life. The same way, when you develop as a person, you had ideas from a young child and you taught a certain way, and then you went to high school and you met friends, and some of your values and morals and ethics and the way you think changed, and then you started working, and that was a totally different environment, so you had to step up. Then you got married and you had children, and you found yourself thinking, oh my God, nothing works. And then they grow up, and then you find yourself missing them, even though they were miserable and they put you through hell. You find yourself missing them.
I know.
You know what I mean? So you see, you do grow and you go to a new version of yourself, and you find yourself being more patient and more understanding. And whereas before you would have gotten short-tempered, now you're much better. Today, when I was setting up for this, I have a dog, Belgian Shepherd, a German Shepherd, and he's like a little terrorist. My children call him Hades. I call him Tyrion, but whatever. And I was setting up inside of here, and there's a mat by my bed. And he decided that, okay, he loves the air conditioner, so he's going to lie down there and fall asleep. Now, of course, the time was coming closer for the podcast. So I felt bad, but I had to wake him up. And he decided that he was going to grab one of my books and run outside. So, of course, we had a bill, whatever. And now, normally, before, like if this was about 10 years before, 50 years, I would have gotten really mad and quarreled with him or whatever. I just started to laugh because it was so funny, the fact that, what he was doing. And so you do progress in life, you grow. And when you become self-aware of what your old behaviors were, then you begin to see things a lot different. Because like I said, I like to see life through my own eyes now. I prefer to see it through my own eyes. I don't want to see it through the eyes of, okay, this happened, so I'm supposed to react this way. I suffered a great loss. I got hurt. I felt pain. I felt anguish. I thought, there's no way I could get through this. But then when you stop and you think about it, that I may not know the reason why it happened, but I do know in the years that it has happened, I have grown as a person. I have matured a lot more than I thought because I've got a lot more faith. I have learned to turn to my special one more than anything else. And yes, I do talk to God 24 hours a day while I'm awake in my brain all the time. That's my constant, right? And I do tell people that I live by God's grace and Jesus is my best friend. I mean, one thing that's irreverent. Cyndee, how can you say that? But I said, that's ever since I've been young, I've always said Jesus is my best friend. And I say to a lot of people, I do have a best friend, and he is my best friend because I talk to him all the time, and he's been with me through everything I've been through, so I don't have to tell him any lies. It just takes a little bit because he knows everything anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yes. Yeah. And he
I know
said,
I may sound irreverent to some people, but that's how it is with me. God is God, and there's nothing you can do about it.
well, and Jesus said, I don't call you servants any longer. I call you friends.
Yeah. So like I tell people, I don't really care because this is how I've always spoken to God, and I live by his grace right now because there's no way I should be alive.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that. Obviously, if you flatline 5 times and they're like, okay, well, we can't give any medication, we can't do anything, and you just came back to life, maybe your middle name should be Lazarus times 5. Like Lazarus only came back 1 time, not 5.
Because the thing is that, and the strange thing was that they were trying to help me, give me medication to see if they can control the lupus and like my reaction, my allergic reaction, things and stuff. And what they gave me actually, after twice, they realized that I'm allergic to all medication, so they can't do anything at all.
Well, by the grace of God, you really are here.
That's
And
what I
you
said,
are,
yeah.
yes, and you were not done then, and you're not done now. You have a book out that can help a lot of people. Tell us about that.
Okay, the book is called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. Run into the fire, discover me in the ashes. Now, the title itself is Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. And that is quite true because I believe that the most courageous thing you can do is love someone. Because when you love someone, you take the biggest risk in your life because you are giving part of them, of yourself to them, and you're taking part of them into you. And now I'm not talking about infatuation and this kind of casual love people have now. I'm talking about love that touches you and reaches you, where you can forgive somebody before they even do something wrong because you understand that we are all human and we are all imperfect. And just as you have flaws, they have flaws also. The most courageous thing you can do is love somebody because you also understand at the same time, like I said, you're human and you're not permanent and nobody knows what tomorrow will bring. And you take a risk in loving someone who may be gone tomorrow. Not just in a breakup, but I mean, pass away, gone like that. And that is the bravest thing you can do. So grief is the price you pay for love. And running to the fire, discover me in the ashes is I guess, I want the passage you go through. I won't see it as the aftermath, but it is the passage you go through because you have to go through a fire. And like you said, you get beauty from the ashes. That's where they came from. Because mourning endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And you have to go through pain. You have to go through loss. You have to go through the surrender, the acceptance, and the agreement. And you do encounter things when you grieve. Because listen, when I had to face that loss and feel that anguish of that one person who I loved, and memories of things that happened before came up. Like people I have loved, like memories of growing up and the times you face ostracism and the times you face disappointment and the times people were angry. All those things will come crowding in because remember, your mind is like a library and has books in sections. And when you feel pain, everything that is involved with pain will come up. And you remember things that happened from you growing up when people were unkind to you, when people hurt your feelings and stuff like that. So I had to face a lot of things, not just dealing with the fact that I had this loss and absence in my life, but also pain that came up that I thought I had dealt with. And you begin to look at things a lot different. So that's why I said you have to run into the fire because you have to face yourself. You have to face all the things that happen in your life. You have to face the fact, listen, these things happen in my life. It hurts a lot. I don't want to feel these things and stuff like that. I don't think it's fair. I don't want people to ostracize me and tell me that you should have died instead because I got that. You should have died instead or whatever. And so you have to go through the fire. And then at the end of it, you end up with ashes because you kind of had to make peace with all the things that happened before. And now you end up in the ashes. And when you end up in the ashes, that's where you sit down and you ask yourself, okay, what is left? After I've gone through and I've looked through everything in life and gone through this loss and looked at all the losses and disappointments I've had in my life, what do I have now? And that's what I said, discover me in the ashes, because it's only after you go, do you realize that it's only after you go through something very, very hard that you actually grow stronger and that you actually see things differently and that you actually had strength you didn't know you ever had to go forward, or you actually can get creative ideas about doing things a different way, and it helps you to refocus and redirect and reframe your life.
Absolutely. I was just telling a friend the other day that strength is found in the struggle. It's not even found, it's forged in the struggle. And I want to thank you again for saying that the most courageous thing you can do is choose to love. I just, again, had a conversation with a friend the other day. We lost our cat of 15 years. And I know it's a cat. I get it. It's an animal, it's a pet, it's not a family member. Some people consider them family members. I do. And I'm like, I don't want another one because I don't want to feel that pain. But that was a cowardice thing to say.
Nope. I understand that because like when my husband died at the same time, like we had two Rottweilers and they both had cancer at different times. So they died. So I told my children, I do not want another dog again because my dogs are like my children to me.
Yeah.
And I treat them like that. And they're very close to me and stuff. And I spoil them. I will tell you, I do spoil them and they do everything with me. And then like after 2 years, we found my vet. Well, I was looking for like a specific kind of dog, and my vet got him, and I saw Tyrion, and I said, "Okay, yes, I'll take him." And now he's been with me, and it's like, oh, geez, why did I? So the other day I was asking my children, I said, "Why did I ever get another dog again?" Because he causes he's like chaos sometimes, but
Yeah.
you do love them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a state of like sleep and wake, that moment when you're just starting to wake up, but you're also partly asleep. And I heard a voice and it said, "You're a courage coach." And I popped my head up and I'm like, "What?" And it was repeated, "You're a courage coach." And so, of course, I want to be able to lead people in courage. And for you to say loving somebody or something or someone is one of the most courageous things you could do. Of course, I want to be aligned with that. So thank you for being a good reminder for me that yes, with love comes pain and grief, but it also comes some of the best memories and experiences you could have in life.
It is actually. And the thing is, I think, not to get sidetracked, but sometimes I think we have given this idea of love that is supposed to be this idealized idea, not realizing that love itself is not an idea. It's not a thought. It's not an action. Love itself is part of who you are because you were created in love, of love, with love, and for love. And that's how God created us because that's how He created us. And the thing is, we have to realize that you weren't just created because God was bored. I mean, He wasn't bored. He could have done anything. He created you because He loved you and He put His love in you and He made you out of love and He gave you love and He still surrounds you with love. So it is it is the most precious gift you can give to anybody.
Such a good reminder. This has been one of my most favorite interviews I've ever done in over 100 episodes, Cyndee. So thank you for that. It hits every emotion as you were speaking and we're having this conversation unfold. Have you ever seen Steel Magnolias, that movie?
I vaguely remember the name, but to be honest with you, I read books. I don't really look at movies and
Okay.
TV.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's from I think like late 80s or early 90s. And that movie just hit on so much, but it is about grief and loss. And it just, one moment you're crying your eyes out doing the ugly cry, and then the next moment you're cracking up. It's likened to that, this interview. It's very, every emotion is hit. And I want to thank you so much. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Listen, life is full of experiences, and people would have a lot of opinions about everything you do and everything you are, or everything like that. But one thing you have to remember is that you alone can determine your expectations and what you want from life. And you are given a gift of life. And the most important thing, you are given a choice to do what you feel is right for you and what you know is right. And life is a gift, and learn to treasure it every single day. And we plan, but also remember what you have right now and look around and treasure the people, treasure what you are blessed with, treasure the fact that you are here and you are breathing and you have the ability to do things, and give a little of yourself because that's what you give, because that's it. That's what love is about. And we have to learn to love one another as we love ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Cyndee, thank you so much for coming back to life at least 5 times physically, but I feel like you've come to life multiple times throughout your life. I don't know, even know how many times, but it's gotten you to this point where we're now having this conversation. And if you're listening or watching this, it's here for a purpose, just like you, Cyndee. So thank you for taking everything you've learned in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the hard, the joyful, and wrapping it all up in this book and being willing to help all of us. So thank you for that. If you're listening or watching this, I want to remind you that grief will change you, and it should. But what if that change is the very thing that unlocks parts of you that were waiting to be born? Cyndee's story is a living reminder that we don't rise by forgetting what we've lost. We rise by honoring it and allowing it to expand what we see as possible. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to fix what's broken. You simply need to be open to what grief might be making room for. Possibility lies on the other side of surrender, acceptance, and agreement. And you are not less because of what you've lost. You are more. Step into that, because that is how you live victoriously. Thank you for joining another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. And until we meet again, be blessed.
Angel of light, come into me. Show me what I need to see. You are my pathway into the night. Lead me from shadows to light. You smile.